Good afternoon. My name is Zack Poole with Paragon Films. I am a state territory sales rep covering the state of Georgia and surrounding states, Tennessee, the Carolinas, and Florida. Today, our webinar will be on Contrast, which is our high slip film. Initially, we're going to start out with the history and the need for a slip film in Paragon's inventory. Initially, the slip market was developed in the early 90s. Some of the earliest patents I could find dated back to the late 80s, early 90s. ExxonMobil initially developed a high slip resin to be added to current stretch film in the market. That was issued in 1992 with stretch film with high slip hitting its peak around the late 90s into early 2000s. Linear Plastics developed the first quote-unquote slip film or high slip film. It was labeled as LFOX. That was their item number for it. Now, traditionally, before slip films were introduced into the marketplace, two-sided cling film was what most of these companies and manufacturers developed. With LFOX, Linear Plastics actually got this slip film into a one-sided cling with a more or less low slip on the skin layer, as opposed to a true slip film like Contrast and the ones that we see in the marketplace today. Everything was traditionally just a low slip, one-sided cling compared to the two-sided clings in the early 90s. During its peak in the early 2000s, consistency was the main issue that most manufacturers had to deal with. Traditionally, these products were blown. They had gauge bands, they had consistency issues, they had trouble coming off the lines, and one skid would vary from the other 10 skids that the customer may order. Consistency led to the decline, or lack of consistency led to the decline of the slip market around 2001 to 2005 is when it really started its downward slide. Most of the gauges that you would find traditional slip films in the early 90s and 2000s, they varied from 80 gauge to sometimes even into 200 gauge, allowing more of that one-sided cling or low slip product. Paragon saw the need to have a true high slip film back then, and they developed Paragon's Force 4 stretch film. It was a higher slip or a high slip film compared to the rest of the market back in the early 2000s. But because some of the resin manufacturers that Paragon used to make Force 4 discontinued some of the resins, Paragon decided it was the best idea to just eliminate that product from their inventory as opposed to sacrificing quality because of having to switch to different resins that were untested or unknown at that point. Now, currently in the market, there are four quote-unquote high slip films. We truly believe that Paragon's Contrast sets the gold standard for what a high slip film is. We'll get into part of its technology here. So Paragon patented their slip film process for Contrast, so it is different than anything else out on the market. Paragon looked at current high slip films today and saw that for a machine film, most manufacturers put a high slip layer in just the outside or the skin layer. Paragon decided it would be the best idea to put it a couple layers deep. So as your machine film is running through a high pre-stretch geared machine, the skin will break up, revealing layers of slip multiple layers down. That way you didn't lose any consistency with your slip, whether you're running a 200% geared machine or a 275 or even over 300. They patented that process of developing the slip on the back of Nexus's product line. So they took all of the great components from our Nexus machine film and added a slip layer to it. So with contrast, you're going to get the puncture, the tear resistance, the exceptional load containment, and ultimately reducing the cost per pallet wrap across many of the competitors. This gives you and your customer the lowest cost of doing business, of wrapping pallets, of eliminating bad film that may have run through, machine that has a little bit of age to brand new. This film will perform on any piece of equipment, new, old, American made, or foreign. And it's going to outperform any film in the marketplace today. Now, below I've attached the SKU sheet or the product sheet for contrast. Currently, we offer it in both 20-inch and 30-inch rolls, and we have them currently in 50 gauge, 70 gauge, and 90 gauge. And we have put the full footage links on them to give us the best usability, cost, and sustainability for these film products. Now, some of the benefits, and we've talked a little bit about it, but having that high slip layer, multiple layers deep into the contrast product will allow pallets that may be oversized or floor loaded or stacked very tightly in a trailer to have film from two pallets touch and be able to be removed from that trailer without causing any damage, abrasion, or disruption to the product currently sitting on the pallet. It's great for protecting loads in restricted areas. And because of the Nexus base in this film, it has a high cling package, reducing tails and film issues in automatic equipment, conveyor lines, getting wrapped around forklifts, the forks or the wheels. The high cling will really eliminate any tail issue that you or your customer may be having currently. With our lower gauge in the 50, 70, and 90 gauge over what has been traditionally in the marketplace up to 200 gauge, we've actually given a higher performance, longer roll footages, which leads to better cost savings. And with those extra feet on the roll and the higher performance, it really leads to a better sustainability for you and your customer. A lot of your operations managers, warehouse managers, and even buyers are pushing to get better sustainability reports, tools, and we can perform all of that for you and teach you how to do it as well, to be able to send those reports to them for sustainability of switching this film. Now, the main thing that slip film has and is measured by is the coefficient of friction. So coefficient of friction is the relationship of forces between moving objects, or friction. If you put two pallets side to side, get them in real tight, and you try to remove one of them, traditionally friction is going to be the issue that causes film to be abrasive or cause tears, or have your film stick together and cause issues for your pallets in transit, or while removing them. Coefficient, since that's what we're measuring, coefficient of friction, as it gets closer to zero, the less friction will play in between two objects that are moving past each other. Traditional one-sided cling films in the market today are averaging and well above 2. High slip films are around 1, 1.5, even closer to 2 for the coefficient of friction. And I've attached an independent test that Paragon ran against a traditional 120 gauge one-sided cling film with our contrast 70 gauge and our contrast 90 gauge. As you can see on the right, the kinetic coefficient of friction, or the coefficient of friction between moving objects of the 120 gauge one-sided cling sample, was over 4.5, while contrast 70 and 90 gauge were right around 0.56 and 0.58 respectively. Once again, contrast is going to be the gold standard for high slip film, true high slip film in the marketplace today, outcompeting any traditional one-sided cling films or your quote-unquote high slip films from other manufacturers today. So we've actually been able to run a couple case studies using contrast against competitive films. This first one is from a carpet manufacturer. They produce finished roll goods, traditionally carpet rolls in excess of 15 feet, between 12, 15, even sometimes 17 feet wide. They're going to be about 3,000 to 4,000 pounds, and they will be floor loaded after they're wrapped into a trailer, trying to maximize the efficiency of that tractor trailer. This specific company was having issues with finished goods as they were being removed from the trailer, having rolls stick together. The film, as they floor loaded them, there would be friction there. The film would stick together, and as they used a pole heister, a large pole that runs through the center of those carpet rolls, to remove them, they would end up getting drug across a bottom roll, causing the film to break completely, to have abrasions, to damage those finished rolls, or even unwind off that very small core that they're wound on. They were using a one-sided cling 100 gauge product, and we switched them to a 90 gauge contrast. We eliminated all of the abrasion and damage to the rolls due to offloading or shifting during transit. And we saved them 10% annually just by switching the film. That does not include any rewrapping that they may have done previously, restacking, labor hours to rewrap those rolls, just 10% annually on swapping films. So looking at the graph to the right, this was actually a snippet of that case study, that client analysis report that we do for all of our customers. And if you look at the top left, the cut and weigh dropped from 40.3 ounces of film used to 33.8. On pallet stretch in the top right went from 197% to 214. We were able actually to increase the tension force on those rolls to allow less film usage and allow the rolls to last longer. Our cost per pallet wrap dropped from $3.18 to $2.86, and our containment numbers went from 11.5 pounds to 13.7 pounds of containment as you went down the roll. Now, case study number 2 was a parts manufacturer. They had previously used a 100 gauge high slip film, currently available in the marketplace. They had issue with friction on their pallets when offloading trailers. These were standard pallets, 40 by 48, but they had parts in corrugated cases that would overhang sometimes 3 to 5 inches. And as they stacked pallets into the trailer, pallets would be very close or even butted up against each other. When they would offload, you would get some of the sticking or abrasion that would cause film to fall apart, unwrap, cause these cases to topple over and cause these workers to have to restack. So we switched them from a 100 gauge high slip to a 70 gauge contrast, and they immediately saw a 95% decrease in freight damage during offload. Now, this company measured their freight damage in essentially just one category. It was damaged, and that could have been the film issue, a driver slamming on his brakes, causing pallets to fall, forklift drivers misusing the equipment to either puncture the pallet, the film, or the product, or an improper stacking technique from one of their facilities. So it all kind of run under one damage report, and we were able to decrease it 95% by switching to a 70 gauge contrast. And overall, they saw a cost savings of 43% just by switching the film again. Once again, it did not include any labor for restacking, the cost of restacking, or new materials to get pallets to where they should have been to get it out the door or receive it. Now, in the graph on the right side, the cut and weigh ounces dropped from 9.2 to 4.5. On pallet stretch, we were able to increase from 217% to 257. And we dropped the overall cost per pallet wrap from 77 cents to 44 cents. And then your containment, top, middle, and bottom increased roughly 10% across the board. So if you have any questions, I know I kind of ran through that fast, but if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Once again, my name is Zack Poole. My contact information is there, and I cover currently the state of Georgia. We have samples available at all 3 of our locations, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Washington, for all of these contrast SKUs. If you have any questions or you'd like to discuss maybe an opportunity that you think this film may work for us, please reach out to your territory rep or Carla Thorne with any questions. I thank you for your time today, and please email us if you need anything. Thank you.